So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews here on Hospital Radio and for my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited that my guest today is an amazingly talented actor, the fantastic Jacob Young. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, Matthew, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, we do find ourselves in a very, very strange situation. This past year has been just madness. I mean, at the moment here in the UK, we're in a third lockdown. We have no idea when it's going to end. What's it like for you over in America? How are things at the moment with the pandemic?
Well, things have been slow. We've been in a couple of different lockdowns. Obviously, California more so than most. New York. I'm in the Southeast, so we're not in an entire lockdown, but it's still people need to be responsible, right? They need to be going to the grocery store on a need-only basis and not gallivanting around all over town and getting exposing people or creating more of a disaster. But as far as the industry is concerned, we were in lockdown for I think 7 months or so. There was nothing going on. They shut everything down, and then all of a sudden, once it lifted, the first lockdown, it was like the floodgates opened. Everybody wanted to catch up because they'd fallen so far behind on all the TV shows and the castings. They'd been put off for several months, and now it's like there's a possibility that things are going to start shutting down, but somehow the entertainment industry is squeaking by with, as a necessity. So thank goodness for that. And we seem to, fingers crossed, keep going forward.
I mean, were you in the middle of any big projects, or what were you doing at the time that it first hit?
Well, we were still living in Utah. We recently just moved to South Carolina. But yeah, I mean, I had a couple projects that were coming up, and some of those projects never even saw the light of day when when it happened. It was just like, if it didn't recover in those 6 months, some of those projects didn't recover, just like many businesses didn't recover. So, but I was fortunate. There's a lot of local groups that I work with in Utah, and they kept me busy with some commercial stuff, some fun character stuff that I actually never had the opportunity to play because I was always under contract working on a TV show. So I was able to stay busy with that. And I've recently, even though there was not much going on at that time, I'm actually going to be joining, I can't say which one, but it's a Disney Plus show. And I'm at least in one of the episodes playing one of the people's fathers. So hopefully a reoccurring scenario, but staying busy with that. And the next project that I'm working on, well, I just finished, it's a short film, but it looks like we're going to be getting the financing to move forward for a full-length feature. There'll be a trailer coming out by the end of the month called Prepare to Launch. So it's about Apollo astronauts based on a true story. And I play John Bull, who was he was basically deemed to be an Apollo astronaut. He did most of the testing for all the Apollo missions, and they came down with a heart condition. So he's sort of this unsung hero, but later stayed on with NASA for almost 4 or 5 decades, helped spearhead the shuttle system, the shuttle launches and testing. So really, really interesting guy.
And I mean, obviously, over the past year, a lot of people have had to change the way they work. I mean, for myself, I've obviously had to kind of get the equipment to be able to do stuff from home. And I can see that you've obviously, had to kind of equip yourself to make it so you can work from home.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm the kind of person that can't sit still. And the COVID-19 lockdown absolutely killed me. Now, I had been sort of experimenting with a live YouTube channel. And so I was kind of getting the feel of doing some interviews and hosting. A year ago, though, I've been working with a nonprofit charity, Boys Town, which is based on it's a true story. There was a famous movie with Mickey Rooney and Spencer Tracy that was nominated for Oscars, and I think Mickey won an Oscar that year, about a Catholic priest named Father Flanagan, who during the Great Depression, most of these boys in the States here were literally, like, the parents were like, I'm sorry, I know you're 8 years old, but we can't feed you. So go out and try to find work or find help. And so they just send these kids off, typically boys, which is why it became called Boys Town. But Father Flanagan and kids heard about it, so he would just take them all in, every single one of them. And now it's a massive, massive nonprofit organization. In fact, Boys Town, USA is actually a spot in Nebraska. It's its own town. It's got its own judicial system. It's got its own high schools. And it's for kids that are in limbo, boys and girls. They have all the houses that are there are for, they're not foster situations. They're just temporary housing and families that take them in. So it's a really wonderful organization. And I've done a lot of work with them. And I pitched to them, I said, look, I'd love to give back and I'd love to do a mental health podcast because I've had certainly a lot of issues in my life, like all of us have. And I'd love to not only learn more about myself, but able to help some others that might be in need. So with that being said, it took about a year and it took the COVID lockdown. And now here we are. And I've launched it. We're on our 5th episode. I'm going to be with them at least for the next 6 months, doing a podcast every week. So it's been fun and working from home.
I mean, the other, mentioning mental health, it's such an important thing to talk about. And obviously, this last year has proved that you have to talk about it because, bottling it up isn't going to help anyone. So, I mean, would you say that you've noticed that people have wanted to talk more just because, the situation we find ourselves in?
Well, interestingly enough, you asked that because I was concerned that maybe people wouldn't want to talk about, especially personalities and celebrity, folks that I know. I wasn't sure how open, but it seems because of it, they're a lot more open about it. But also an important statistic and a fact that's completely unfortunate. Because of COVID, there's been a huge rise in abuse cases, sexual abuse, horrible scenarios that are happening that we don't want to talk about. And hopefully this helps to, shine that spotlight because people are just not quite equipped to having necessarily their children in their lives 24/7 on a lockdown situation. That time when they go to school is, time that they can be apart, but there's some parents that just aren't equipped to do that. And unfortunately that's the reality. So it's been a huge strain, this COVID-19 on all aspects.
I mean, here in the UK, we've had quite a few sort of stories of kids that just are going hungry during the holidays because there is, their families are not working as much as they used to. They can't afford the food. I mean, there's a footballer over here, or, you would probably know it as soccer, called Marcus Rashford. And he's done a lot of campaigning with the UK government to try and get these kids like school meal vouchers to try and keep them fed because otherwise no one else is looking after them. So it's good to see that obviously people are doing things to help others who are less fortunate and who are struggling at these times.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those parents, those kids are counting on that one meal at that school. And if they can't be at school, where are they going to get the food from? So, I mean, thank God that we had injected the stimulus program. I still don't think it's enough. There's a lot of families, like you're saying, that are completely out of work, businesses that are completely gone. My business was 7 months. It's just a really tricky to navigate right now. And that's really great to hear that he's doing that.
Now, obviously, like we've been saying, things have completely changed. Have you found yourself learning new skills over lockdown, learning things that you never thought you would have to do?
Well, I mean, look, I've always thought about first of all, let's just put this, when I did my live YouTube channel, it was something that I wasn't real confident about doing. I knew I wanted to do it. And it was a skill set that I'd always wanted to be able to do because I've been on the radio as a guest, but I've never been able to, be a DJ or a host. But with that being said, when I was booking talent, this is so funny because when I was booking talent, I'd literally call up some PR agents sometimes to see if I could get some higher caliber talent, some relevant, I shouldn't say that, I should say relevant talent. So all my friends who I've interviewed would be like, that asshole. But basically I would talk to their PR reps and they'd be like, okay, so you don't want to fly them out? And I'm like, no, they do it from the comfort of their home, from their computer. Well, with COVID happening, I mean, if there's a bright side of things, now everybody's so used to it. I mean, the Tonight Show is on, is podcast, the Jimmy Kimmel Show, it's podcast. So I like to say that I'm slightly ahead of my time. But I did learn this skill set, and I actually rather enjoy it. I mean, I have a great setup here, and I love talking to people. Aside from that, on the weekends, which I've been doing quite a bit anyway, is working with kids, acting. And I work with ATNY, which is a very well-known, established children's academy based in New York City. Of course, they're not learning in person, so learning in virtual. So I've been doing that, and our new semester starts this next Saturday, and we've got 9 classes, and they range from improv to on-camera technique, and the kids are so regimented now because they're already learning virtually. And I'd say 99% of my students that are there already are learning virtually from home. And they're just so great at it. They'll mute their mics. I don't have to say anything. They just know, they're respectful. And then when it's their turn, they come up. But it's working. And what didn't work before, what people didn't think would work, is now working. And it's great to have something like this, talking to you all the way in the UK over Zoom.
It just shows that, you know, I mean, 5 years ago, Skype was maybe just about coming out, but it wasn't the same. You know, you'd do a phone call. I mean, we spoke about 5 years ago when you were on The Bold and the Beautiful. But, you know, it's completely different to be able to see who you're speaking to. And, you know, I mean, personally, for me, I prefer interviews face to face because you can gauge what the guest is thinking, and you can kind of, it's a bit more natural and free flowing, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have an expert that works for the Boys Town National Crisis Hotline. At the end of every one of my podcasts, she comes on and speaks to what that person was saying, whatever that celebrity was talking about. We relate it back to the Boys Town National Hotline and how people can find resources. But I told her, I said, look, I prefer to do it over Zoom. The audio, of course, is better. But I'd also like to see you. Please don't keep your microphone. I'd like to interact with you. And it's like being face to face. It makes such a huge difference. She's just like, make sure you don't ever show anybody though. It's fine. Secret's safe. But it does. It makes a huge difference to be able to interact. And it's kind of almost like it was before COVID.
And I mean, imagine that obviously being an actor, when you're not able to act, that is just like, it must be frustrating because you just want to get out there and perform and do what you love doing. So I imagine when you're having that time when you can't, it must be really frustrating.
Well, first of all, actors are incredibly complicated. You know, I'd like to say I'm one of the normal ones, but you start to, and maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I'm speaking for a lot of people, you start to rely on that interaction and being able to express yourself, even if they're not your words, but connecting. And your life is to entertain, right? And to take somebody's words and make them strong and powerful and engage. And when that just suddenly goes out like a light and it's gone, you know, you're in the darkness, and it can be incredibly depressing, and you feel that you're not wanted, even though it has nothing to do with you. But if that's your livelihood and that's what you're living for, then you know that you have to find that balance. You have to let that go, and you do it any way you can. I mean, whether you're working out, whether you're interacting with your family, you're talking on the phone, or if it's just, you know, hanging out with your best friend somehow, you know, safely.
Now, I mean, we must talk a little bit about The Bold and the Beautiful, because that was kind of how I first became aware of your work. And I mean, earlier, or I should say last year, I was joined by Lindsay Godfrey, who of course is one of your co-stars from The Bold and the Beautiful. So what are your memories of working on that show? Because it does look like you were a close-knit family on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these shows, because you're doing it Monday through Friday, you're working way more than you would on a particular film with the cast members. I mean, you're in each other's lives every single day, so it's inevitable. You learn things about them that you wouldn't learn on any other kind of show. Maybe if you're doing something, say in the West End or on Broadway, it happens to be a year run, but you really do. You become a family. It's cliche. It sounds funny, but you start to really rely on those people. And my experience on Bold and the Beautiful with my castmates was always amazing. You know, everybody was just always so giving and personable. Just a real lovely group. You know, my only issue with Bold and the Beautiful is it's overly cast. There's too many characters for a very small amount of time. And so if you're an actor like myself who, you know, did 846 episodes of All My Children, and then suddenly you're on a show that barely works you 3-4 times a month, you know, you start going, well, do they know, you know, who they're working with, or do they care, or is it worth my time? And so I had to make a decision at that point. You know, they wanted to take me off contract, and I said, if you're going to put me on reoccurring, I'd rather not be on the show. And I meant it. And I meant every bit of it. Not because I didn't like the cast, but because I feel like I'm in more demand, and I don't want to be waiting on the line going, when are they going to call me next? And so I'd rather explore other opportunities. And since Bold and the Beautiful, even being, just those few years ago, I've shot 7 different films. They're all indie, they're Lifetime, they're Hallmark, but I've had the time of my life because I've gotten to do things I've never been able to do because of being under contract for so many years.
And I mean, I imagine that as an actor, that's the one thing you love doing. I mean, actors are storytellers. You want to tell a story. And when you're not telling stories, I mean, obviously during your time, there was the whole storyline with Maya's character and the transgender storyline and the having a baby. But I imagine when it kind of starts to dry up and you're not getting those storylines, you want to get back to telling important stories. And if that means leaving a show and going on and doing new projects, as an actor, that's what you want to do. You want to be doing storytelling.
Absolutely, 100%. It started really hitting me when I'd have to show up for 1 or 2 lines, even though they were paying me the same amount as if I had 60 pages of dialogue. I would show up, I'd say, "Hey, Dad," blah blah blah, or whatever, and then gone. And you start to feel, you're not telling the story. You're just this thing that's popping in every once in a while. And it just was, I'm telling you, it was killing my soul as an actor, just like you're saying. Yes, you want to work, you want to tell a story. You don't want to just be, and you know what, the expression is true, and I have to tell you, because I tell all my acting students too, it's, there's no such thing as a small part, only small actors. But after so many years of telling such strong stories, for me, my heart wasn't in it anymore over there, Bold and the Beautiful. And again, I'm not afraid to say that. You have to recognize that. You have to recognize anything in life. If you're not passionate about something anymore, you need to move on. Otherwise, it will be like a cavity in your mouth that's just decaying you. And I couldn't have that anymore. So I'm glad, and I've been able to welcome all sorts of new opportunities in my life.
Now, I mean, going forward, is there a dream role that you would love to play, or someone you would love to work with going forward? I mean, what would be the dream?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I would just love to continue. I would actually, honestly, I'd love to be on a primetime series or a streaming series like the Hulu or the Amazon, something that's an original series. I'd love to do that for a few seasons. I think that would be ideal. As far as working with a particular person, there's just so much talent out there. I couldn't even I couldn't name just one. That's the problem. There's so much talent anymore to pull from. I would just be blessed to be a part of a strong series.
And I mean, what sort of programs are you gripped on at the moment? Is there anything that you're just loving at the moment?
Well, yeah, I love that Queen's Gambit. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard a lot about it, and I've heard so many good things about that show, because it's obviously one of the Netflix series that's going on at the moment. But I've heard so many good things about it, and it does look amazing.
And I'm such a bad actor. I should know her name, but she's fantastic, and she's probably going to win like some sort of award for the series. It was beautifully shot. I mean, these series anymore, it's just they're just like one long movie. They're stunning to watch, and the colors, and especially when they're doing time period, they really embody it and they take you back. And it was, even though it was loosely based off of a true story, very loosely based off a true story, it was really powerful series, and I really enjoyed that one.
Now, for anyone that wants to check out your interviews and your podcast, where can they find them online?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much anywhere and everywhere podcasts are available. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, of course, and then a litany of other podcast stations where if you know where a podcast, you can find a podcast. It's there. It's called Real Conversations with Jacob Young, and we got some great guests, obviously, and it's really just starting to pick up some traction. I just had some statistics that came out. I was like 13th in the U.S. for film and TV interviews for Apple Podcast. And I'm just really blessed that I've been able to keep up the pace, number one, and have the guests that I've been able to have on the show. So it's please, anybody who's interested, subscribe, check it out.
And I mean, I just have to say it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me. Is there any messages you'd like to give to anyone who is currently stuck in hospital here in the UK, or anyone that's watching online and has, enjoyed our chat?
Yeah, I mean, keep the faith. Things are going to get better. It's all going to turn around. And just, I say this at the end of every one of my show. In the meantime, love yourself and love each other, because that's the only thing we have right now.
Thank you so much, Jacob. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time. Of course, keep safe. And yeah, hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it.